Bomb and pellet on any commercial fishery at any time of year is a brilliant tactic. Here's my top tips for making the best use of that method. Well, let's talk about kit. Nice standard feed rod that you use for all your commercial fishery work, doesn't really matter as long as it's soft and as long as it's around 10 foot in length. You know, the bites are going to be ridiculously vicious today, they're just going to rip the rod off the rest, so we're not too concerned about bite indication, it's just a nice soft rod for playing the fish. I've got £5 line on the reel, robust sinking line, and the rig, the actual business end, is a simple sliding rig. I've put a snap link on the main line, I've got a bomb on the end of that. I'll talk about the bomb in a second. That snap link runs down, I've just got two number 8 stots just sitting on top of the hook length loop. And then, because we're at the Glebe today, a wonderful fishery full of fish, but there is a 20-inch hook length rule, so I've got 20 inches there below the feeder. The actual hook length today is 0.16, and I've got down to pellet waggler, Guru pellet waggler hook. That's a size 16 Guru pellet waggler hook. Actually it's a 14, sorry about that, pellet waggler hook. And I've just tied it knotless knot with a bait band. So let's go back to talk about this bomb. It's important to use the lightest bomb that you possibly can. I'm only casting today probably 20 metres, just in that sort of distance between a pole line and the far bank. So I don't really need a bomb. What I'm planning to do is catch a lot of bites with this long hook length just as the bait settles. I'm going to be feeding quite regularly, and then I'm going to be casting the bomb right on top of the feed, trying to get a bite as the hook bait settles. That's why this lift bomb is the best way to go. Certain situations though, where you're sitting there waiting a long time for a bite, a nice heavy bomb, a really direct rig, tighten right up to the lead, can result in, you know, catching some wary fish. But today, where we're expecting the fishing to be quite active, then I use this nice little light bomb, makes a nice little plop, similar to the pellets I'm loose feeding, and hopefully I'll get more bites as a result. So when it comes to bait, I'm going to keep things really simple. I plan on feeding 8mm pellets. I can catapult these comfortably out to the distance I want. They're going to sink nice and quickly, and I'm planning on catching decent sized fish today. They're sort of averaging £5 the fish that I'm targeting, so 8mm pellets are about right. Now if it was going to be a little bit windier, I'd probably go even up to 11mm pellets, you know, hard CARP pellets again, just to get a bit more accuracy in the wind. But today, not much wind on it, 8mm will be fine. Also, I've got some smaller pellets. These are 6mm, but they're actually slightly bigger than 6mm. They're probably an in between, they're probably almost 7mm really. These will work great in the band if I start catching some smaller fish, or if the fish become a little bit wary and I just want a bit of a change bait. Sometimes, rather than going up in size with change baits, going down in size can be just as good. So I've got those there, you know, in reserve. Now, something that I'm a big believer in is if I'm feeding pellets, I want to put pellets on the hook. I want to actually be fishing on the hook what I'm feeding. So while I'll be using those two baits, primarily as feed and hook bait, my only other change bait that I've got today is also pellet based. It's an expander pellet, really soft, perfect for, you know, any size fish really. There's a lot of skimmers in this lake, skimmers and bream, might catch a few of them doing that as well. All I'll do is I'll whip the hook length off, put the hook length on with a quick stop, and just poke the quick stop through two of those expander pellets, create a nice soft, you know, buoyant bait that often, when things are tricky, big fish can't refuse. So there you go, there's the bait option, nice and simple. Let's get some actual fishing done. Right, so we've cast out, sinking the line. Now how you set the tip, I think, is very important. In my opinion, you want the tip set as slack as possible. Now obviously today we're using a running rig, free running rig, so we haven't really got a bolt effect going on. You know, the fish actually bolts against the tip rather than the lead. So what I'm doing is just setting the tip with a slight bit of tension in. That'll help prick the fish. The hook will prick the fish, he'll bolt, and then then I can strike and hook the fish properly. Obviously, if I was to just set that tip really slack, because we're on a free running rig, there'll be no resistance there for the fish to hook itself against or to bolt against. So think about the rig you're using, but importantly, the least resistance on that tip, the better. Right, so I've touched on feeding, but let me talk to you about the situations where I'd like to feed, you know, a little bit heavier or a little bit more frugally. First of all, you've got cold water conditions, winter time. You know, water's freezing cold. Fish aren't going to want 20, 30 pellets every cast raining on top of them. They're going to want a nice softly approach. That's where feeding 1, 2 pellets every cast, every sort of 2-3 minutes, just to try and spark a response is going to work. And likewise in the summer months, especially if you're faced with shallow water, maybe 2 or 3 feet of depth, where the fish aren't naturally going to rise up in the water column to intercept the bait, again, 1, 2, 3 pellets every couple of minutes is going to be a brilliant tactic. Now today we've got 6 or 7 feet of water in front of us. If I start feeding 1 or 2 pellets, the water is reasonably warm, those fish are going to want to come up in the water and intercept those pellets. So what I'm going to do is actually feed a little bit more bait and a little bit less frequently. That'll keep the fish pinned to the bottom where they're easier to catch. Obviously with a bomb, we're fishing on the bottom, we're a little bit limited. You know, I don't want to think about picking up a waggler where it becomes a little bit tricky, and we've got to think about the depth that fish are feeding at. So what I'm going to do is control where the fish are sitting with the amount of loose feed I'm feeding and the frequency that I'm feeding it. So, as I said earlier, 4 pellets, twice a cast is a good starting point. But that was great to start with. Now what I've found is best is to feed 15, probably 15 pellets, and do that just before I cast in. That way some bait will hit the bottom, sits on the bottom, I can chuck straight over that bait, and there's enough bait on the deck to keep the fish pinned to the bottom. So you can see the weather's took a real turn for the worst, but before I go, let me just give you one tip. Now, when you hook a fish, make sure it ends up in the net. See lots of people rushing fish to the net. These fish I'm catching today, they're quite big fish, so it's worth taking my time with. Now, when I hook a fish, I just like to keep the rod low, nice and low, and then, to be fair, this fish is nearly ready, to be fair. And when, and only when, the fish is right under the rod tip, then it's just a case of lifting up and then scooping on the first time, scoop it. And there you go, I tell you what, that's a really nice fish. And even though it's absolutely bucketing down, it's been worth stopping on just to end. He's a real warrior, look at him. He's had a few battles, this fella. So there you go, great way to end.